During this time of lockdown and self-isolation and social distancing, and with the growing concern about coronavirus, COVID, we all need a little bit of magic in our lives. Magic, perhaps in any part of the world, has the same effect as it has on us. As a matter of fact, if you just utter the word magic a couple of times, like magic, magic, it has a sense of positivity. There's a latent excitement which comes to you. And the best part about it is that it unites a child and an adult together in positivity. So today we decided to catch up with magician Maneka Sorcar to talk about the art and science of magic as she sees. To start off with a small introduction, which I'm sure will not do justice, and that's why we have kept this interview to know more about her as well as the art. Maneka Sorcar is not only a talented magician, she is also a role model for many a women, as she breaks the glass ceiling to become one of the forerunners of her art. It wouldn't be even wrong to say that she is the magic daughter of India. She is the ninth generation of the Sorcar family to be a magician, and perhaps the first, a woman also. With this, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to you and thank you for taking out time and doing this for us.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Trisha. And thank you also for the very lovely introduction.
Well, that's just everything which is there on internet also. So it's not something new that I said. So,
and very rightfully said, we do need a lot of magic in our lives right now with all that is going on. COVID or no COVID, I mean, magic is always required in everybody's life.
yes,
What is life without a little spice, right?
absolutely.
Magical spice.
Absolutely. To begin with, now since we're talking about spice of life and indeed magic being there all throughout our lives and history, could you tell us a little bit about the history of Indian magic?
Actually, that's like taking a spoonful of water out of the ocean and trying to explain what the ocean is all about. Uh, Indian magic has been there for a very long time. In fact, the very at your very introduction, the thing which you said, it's an art and a science. Let me just correct you a little bit. Definitely, it has the DNA of an art form as well as it is a science, but it is a compound, not a mixture. So magic is in itself is a subject. It is neither fully art, neither fully science. It takes its parentage from both these subjects, no doubt, but in itself it is a subject. And it took us quite a while to make that transition from merely magic in the imagination to bring it onto stage and actually make it happen on stage. So the magic as we know it today, and if I call myself a magician, then it is a theatrical representation of a fairy tale on stage, basically.
Yeah.
If you enact a science fiction or a theatrical story which has magical elements in it, and if you can enact it live on stage, it becomes a magic show.
Yeah.
So essentially, we are actually actors playing the role of a magician.
Okay.
I do not have any supernatural powers, or my father or my grandfather or my forefathers before them have not passed down any such mantra to be used so that we can perform this and that magic. The mantra is basically hard work, more hard work, and more hard work. So it is a sadhana which has been going on for generations, purely for the entertainment of people. Even magic is also called wizardry.
Yes.
And the word wizard in English, it comes from wise man's art. So basically the practitioner, he is using certain principles of nature and diverting the mind of the people somewhere else while he is conjuring certain things, uh, certainly not with any hocus pocus or mantra tantra, using science, and all for the cause of entertainment of the people. So that is important. Magic, it's like a knife, basically. You place it in the hands of a surgeon, it can save somebody's life. You place it in the hand of a murderer, you can get killed. So it is the intention of the person using it that is most important. It's a very unique subject, a subject which is to be studied much further. And really, truly, right now, we need a lot of magic in our lives. I think the biggest magician right now is the COVID virus, or rather, not the COVID virus, actually, Mother Nature. And she willed us to, I mean, go into isolation and just look everywhere. I mean, nature abounds, and we are stuck in our homes. We can't do anything about it.
They actually made the impossible possible. We are actually staying at home for extra work.
Actually, so. I mean, who thought that there would not be any cars on the streets or any any planes above zooming above our heads, or even today I saw that the dogs in our locality, they're pretty much, they still can't come to terms with the fact that the streets are so empty. They're actually wagging their tails and going from home to find out, are there people here? So they're a little flabbergasted.
Yeah. So
where did everybody vanish all of a sudden?
I know that's magic for them. But yes. So tell me something. Every magic trick, I don't know if it's every magic trick or some magic trick or something, there's a logic behind it, right? Or that, as you said, there's a science behind it, or there's an art behind it. So there is today, is there any school which actually teaches magic apart from, of course, Harry Potter's school?
There are many schools that teach the art of magic. Just like any other school which teaches you how to become a singer or a dancer. But at the end of the day, this is a performing art. So you can train yourself in a certain way. You can learn the sort of tricks behind the trade. But it really depends on the person concerned. You have to be born an artist. Just like if you want to become a vocalist, you must know how to sing. No amount of training can actually make you a singer. It goes for any other performing art, so to speak. So it is true for the case of magic as well. There are many institutions that teach magic, but that wouldn't really make you a professional magician. If had that been the case, then we would have had poets galore in every gully of India, and literatures and singers and dancers and painters. That does not happen. So of course, as an art form, if you take interest in it, you can learn about it. You can hone your skills. You can master those principles. But to become a professional at it, or to pursue it as a profession, as your rosy roti, that's a different ballgame altogether.
You need to have the talent, as well as you mentioned, the hard work that you put to become a performer and a magician. If I can say performer, to become a magician. Yes. But tell me something.
Any art form, the way I see it, any art form, by itself, it is inert, it is inactive, it cannot move. It needs a vessel. So basically, the artist is the vessel, and magic uses me to forward herself.
Yeah.
And I'm very particular about that. Magic is a she.
Yeah. Oh, okay. That's good. Now we brought the topic about she. Tell me something. How many women magicians are there. As a matter of fact, for a really long time, so if you read anything about magic or things like that, women have traditionally been seen as a beautiful distraction on the stage. But you are a magician and you are a woman. How many women are actually practicing it or doing magic? Is it still a male bastion?
It is. Unfortunately, it is. But of course, as you mentioned earlier, the glass ceiling has been broken. It is not a glass ceiling, it is made of concrete. And I have had to, punch against it for very many years. I'm still doing it. Uh, because essentially, the magician is playing the role of a superhuman being for a person or a character for whom nothing is impossible. And in our society, generally, we are used to all the Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, and very off late we have got one Wonder Woman, but there's a huge space lacking for women to take up that superhuman space. We are traditionally more used to accepting a male character in that all powerful space, and so it is with the character of the magician also. If it is my father performing, or if it had been my grandfather performing on stage before him, people are more used to seeing male performers playing the role of the magician. And even when you look at folklore and stories, women who hold that kind of power, magical power, they are given a very negative connotation. They are either a witch or a sorceress or something like of that sort, because it is assumed, or this is the accepted way of thinking, that a woman with that much of power would go in a negative path.
Yeah, they were actually
that has been our thinking. That has been our thinking. Even in my grandfather's time, when Jadoo Samrat was performing, when he started off with stage shows in a much bigger scale, he had to hire white-skinned artists or Anglo-Indian girls to be performing next to him as his assistants, because no Indian girl would come forward to perform on stage at that time. Such were the times. And it was only much later that my grandmother's sister, she came forth and said that I would like to assist you on stage. And basically, that's how it started. My grandmother wanted to perform on stage, but society would not have it.
But did your mother perform on stage?
Yes, my mother, she does not come from a magical background at all. She's a trained classical singer and a Bharatanatyam dancer, but she does not have any magical background. But from the very get-go, she took up an interest in the subject, and while my father was performing, she had a knack for the stage. She loved the stage. So it was she who came forward and said, I would like to assist you. And then the relationship grew from there, and she became more and more involved in the show. Not only what goes on behind the curtain, but also as a performer herself. And she graduated. So basically, my father is definitely her guru as well on stage. And I think for the first time in the history of Indian magic, a husband-wife duo started performing on the same platform.
Wow, that's a story.
Yes. So basically, the show that we see them performing right now, it's their child. It's their first child.
I can absolutely relate to that. That's what my parents did. They started the publishing house. That's their first baby. I am second. I'm very happy with that. But tell me something.
Yes.
How did you get introduced to music, to magic?
I was born into magic, really, because I am born into a family. I have nothing to do with this. It's God's gift. So, but I took it up as a choice, not by force. I know that children who are born into such illustrious families, they are under tremendous pressure to carry forward the legacy. But as I told you, an artist is born, an artist cannot be made.
Yeah.
And in pursuing an art form, if you don't feel it from inside, nothing really can push you.
Yeah.
So when I from as I mean far back into my childhood that I can remember, I have always been very intrigued with the art and science of magic and how it an idea takes shape and is ultimately performed on stage in front of a live audience, and the effect it has on people. So this entire transition from a thought to execution, final execution, enactment, this process itself was very magical to me because I could see both sides of the curtain, the backstage as well as what is happening in front of people. And so there's just one incident where I still have that piece of paper where my class teacher of that time, she had asked us to draw what you want to become when you grow up. And this is a very common thing in school. They would ask you what do you want to become when you grow up. So there are a lot of doctors, nurses, and engineers and actors. There are a plethora of professions that, or a pilot or something. So I drew what I wanted to become, and when I presented the paper to my teacher, she said, "But you don't have a mustache." I had actually drawn a figure wearing a pagri and sherwani, just like my father, and he has the character also has a mustache. To me, it was very gender neutral, but I do not remember when I started actually envisioning myself to be in the shoes of my father. So there is no specific date as such, but it is not as a compulsion or a duty that it happened. It happened for the sheer love of magic. So I did it out of a choice, not out of force.
Yes, that's great. Actually, sorry. So you've also mentioned a few points, few what do you say, few positives. But you are born into the first family of magic. Are there any cons to it also, as you perceive?
As with anything, it comes with pros and cons.
Yes.
Life as we know it, the normalcy is taken away. I had a very short childhood. I had to grow up very fast. I had to learn about the business of things very fast. The equation between me and other children, whether it be in school or any other place, it used to, I mean, there were clashes. And this is, I think, part and parcel of growing up into an illustrious family, because most people don't know how to process it.
Yeah.
They don't know that I'm just at that stage, I'm just like any other child. I require the love and nurturing just like any other child. Just because my father and my mother are known and they appear on television or on stage every now and then, and their name appears on the paper, does not mean that they themselves do not go through the entire human experience. Yes. So they are celebrated for their work. But at the end of the day, when we come back home, like right now, all of us are stuck at home. So it's a very mundane life actually. And I have volunteered to be the, I mean, part-time cook and cleaning lady. I'm actually enjoying it. It's very therapeutic.
I know. I have realized it could be a great exercise also. So I'm taking
Yes, and sometimes, although we do have help available, but I sometimes I mean, choose to do it myself because, as I told you, it's very therapeutic, and the bond that it creates. In any case, I mean, I like to do, I like to serve. I really do. And as a performer, I feel that all the time. When I'm up on stage, I'm not performing for myself, I'm performing for the people. So I like serving, I love serving them. That is me. And when it comes to cooking, I'm doing the same thing, but my stage is the kitchen or the dining table. But essentially, it boils down to the same thing. I'm performing something for other people um, to make them happy, for their entertainment.
For the entertainment, yes. Now let's come to the stage that you're talking about. Now, when as somebody who's learned dance and performed on stage, they say, like we have realized that when you're in a rehearsal, you give your 100%. But when you go up on stage, it is approximately 50 to 60% of what actually you do at rehearsal. Is that true for magic?
I can only tell you from my personal experience, and this is something even my father knows. I do not rehearse.
Okay.
My rehearsals are not like the normal rehearsals that we see. Of course, when we are putting up a new act or I'm going to perform something new, I need to rehearse for the benefit of the other members or my assistants who would be performing along with me to show them their position and what characters they are playing and exactly what role they would be enacting up on stage. But for me, I'm in constant state of rehearsal. I'm in a constant state of what should I say, practice. I'm never off it. Okay. So and even if I do not have an audience in front of me or spectators in front of me, the performance just never stops. That's how I am. So when I walk onto stage, it is always 100%. It is always 100% because I never left them. I was with them.
Yeah.
And it's just, I mean, as if I took an intermission and I'm back. Yes.
So then now that you said you had always in rehearsal, which is something we all should actually consider and think about more deeply. Tell me something about your appearance on stage, the costumes that you wear. On stage, you have to have a certain kind of appearance. How does it affect your style or personality off the stage?
For me, it is very much an extension of my persona. I'm a very extroverted introvert, actually.
Okay.
I love show business. I love exhibitionism. But at the same time, I'm a very quiet person. I keep to my thoughts. But when I have to share them, I have to share them with at least 3,000 people at one time.
Okay, wow.
So that's how it is. That's how it is. And specifically for the costumes, we make it a point that because this is darshandari, it is showbiz. So there has to be a show, and it cannot be like whatever that we wear on a regular basis. Because at the end of the day, we are basically, as I told you, enacting a fairy tale, and we are playing a certain part. If I dress up as a normal person and present magic to people, there will always be this, parallel thought that if she is that normal, does she have any supernatural powers? We do not claim to do that. We are playing a very specific role on stage, and once we are off stage, we are no longer that character.
Okay.
So the PC Sarkar, the magician, or Maneka, the magician, they are up there on stage. When I come back home, I'm no longer that character. Okay. Of course, I am the same person, but it's not that I am always in character.
Okay.
At least costume-wise, I'm not.
Yeah. Of course, in your artwork also.
Yes. Because
Also,
they are very loud, very extravagant.
yeah.
And here I would like to add something. Like for the longest time, when my grandfather was performing,
Mm-hmm.
he was looking for that quintessential garb of an Indian magician.
Yeah.
Because before him,
Mm-hmm.
magicians from India would either wear a black coat or a top hat
Uh-huh.
and emulate Western magicians
Mm-hmm.
to fit into the society of those times, to
Mm-hmm.
make themselves feel important and a part of elite society of those times.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or the other end of the spectrum is the complete Madari who is wearing a loincloth and nothing but.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a vast gap in between.
Yeah.
So my grandfather, when he started performing, he started with the coat and the top hat and the Western garb, but he
Mm-hmm.
was very, very dissatisfied with it. He was
Mm-hmm.
looking for a logo costume so
Mm-hmm.
that he can, which would be identified as the costume of an Indian magician.
Yeah.
And finally, he did come up with the Sherwani and Pagdi,
Yeah.
which of course it turned out from a very interesting interaction between him and Maharaja Hanbant Singh of
Mm.
Jodhpur.
Okay.
Um, yes. Uh,
You tell us the
so
story.
my grandfather was tutoring Maharaja Hanbant Singh in the
Mm.
art of magic. He wanted to learn a few tricks.
Yeah.
He was a big fan of magic,
Mm.
and he had interaction with foreign magicians as well.
Mm-hmm.
But in India, largely he took the help of my grandfather to learn a few tricks.
Mm-hmm.
And after he learned a few tricks, he wanted to surprise everybody in his circle of friends and family, and he wanted to put up a special show.
Mm-hmm.
And he invited all the royalty.
Mm-hmm.
The show was specifically for royalty,
Mm.
and there was kind of a competition between him and his friends and his acquaintances where he would show off exactly his prowess as a magician. And so within the royal grounds, this in a hall, this program was set up, and he started performing, and he performed well. My grandfather was also present in the program, but backstage,
Mm-hmm.
because the rule says that when you're in the presence of royalty,
Mm-hmm.
you commoner cannot come into the presence of royalty unless invited. So my grandfather was backstage.
Mm-hmm.
He was basically assisting Maharaja Hanbant Singh to put up the performance.
Okay.
So now it so happened that once he had performed, he found out that his performance was all of 15 minutes or so.
Mm.
But he has promised a show,
Mm.
and his audience, his very royal audience, they are expecting something to go on for at least an hour or so, if not more.
Uh-huh.
So those 15 minutes just flew by,
Mm.
and Harman Singh had no more tricks up his sleeve, so to
Okay.
speak. He was done.
Okay.
And his royal guests, they started sort of teasing him that this won't do, we want more, so you have to perform more. Now
Mm.
he was in a fix, so he decided that PC Sarkar, his tutor, come up on stage and carry on with other uh, uh, magic performances. Now, when my grandfather came up on stage, there were certain people, certain royal members of the family who protested, saying that this show is for royalty, and as per rule, he cannot come up on stage in our presence. And Hanbant Singh, he took it up as he, he took it to heart, really. He said that I will solve this problem right now. I, uh, with whatever power that is vested in me, I announce him to be the Maharaja of magic, and he will be performing on stage as the Maharaja of magic. He does not have, he is not ready, of course. I am requesting him to put up a performance after me, and I will give him a costume. So the traditional Jodhpur garb of a Maharaja, the pagdi and the sherwani, he gifted a set to my grandfather, and my grandfather put on that costume and performed several other tricks, which of course the crowds thoroughly enjoyed. Now that was the turning point in my for my grandfather. The term Maharaja of Magic and also that costume. Of course, the costume that you see right now that we are using, it is far removed from the Jodhpur style, but the beginning was that.
Yeah.
It was changed and morphed so to speak to be more show busy, more appropriate for show business.
Yeah.
So the glitz and glamour of it is much, I mean, removed from the Jodhpur princess garb. But the beginning was that.
Okay. Oh, lovely.
And right now, I am in the lookout for a costume for which will fit my persona, which would be an ideal costume for an Indian lady magician.
Yeah.
So I'm on the lookout for that.
Yeah, that will be a brand. That's what you're looking at, a brand, right?
Yes.
Now you have an MBA degree as well, a business degree.
Yes.
How do you apply that degree in this art form? And this is, I know this is a behind the scene question, but yes.
Well, my choice to or my decision to do an MBA has everything to do with the choice of profession that I have. And of course, people would say, what does MBA have to do with magic? But it has everything to do with magic, because magic, after all, is all about show business. And there's no business like show business. So to understand the nuances of my own business better, I went on for an MBA. And also I would see these managers and event organizers, they would throw business jargons at us and my father, and sometimes it's difficult to catch up with them. So I thought, why not get at par, and actually because at the end of the day that would help me in my negotiations both nationally and internationally when we're doing shows. And also a huge part of it is people management, because we have a large group. We are handling so many people all over the world. So I think it was a right step to take, and it did help me a lot. Of course, I got my degree, my MBA degree from the US, and obviously I had no plans of settling in the US, but I did get placed very well right after I finished my degree, and everybody was, expecting me to probably settle for that for some time at least. And very conveniently, I said no. But if I do need a great manager, I'm sure to give you guys a call so that you can come over to India and join us.
Yeah, that is the thing. But when you talk about business, innovation is a very, very, very important part of any business.
Yes.
So could you tell us a little bit about the innovations that you've done and how important is business in the business of magic?
Actually, innovation is at the very heart of the subject of magic itself, because when we think of or talk of magic or a magic show, essentially what we are doing is selling a dream. So it all starts from a dream. In Bengali, we say ichhe, which is wish. So it's all about wishful thinking. You make a wish and then you make it come true. You have an idea and then you see that idea to fruition in reality. So magic is all about that. It is making an impossible thing a possibility, or no, possible, not even a possibility. It brings it right in front of your eyes. So the very crux of it is all about innovation. Magic is always the forerunner of science. What is magic today will become science tomorrow, and what is science today was known as magic yesterday. I can give you a very easy example of this. This technology which we are using to converse with each other. Had I gone back in time and taken it to the court of Jahangir and said, Jahapana, you can talk to your wife on this device and you can see her reactions and you can speak to her. he would probably think that is complete magic. I'm doing some kind of jadoo tona or something on him, because he wouldn't know the science behind it. But that wishful thinking, I'm sure, was always there, which is why there are so many instances in folklore, in our the great epics, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, where people are conversing with each other without even being there. And some of it has come to pass even today, where even our very own Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi ji, when he was addressing the masses during his campaigns, he had used his holographic image, which was conversing with the people, and in that way he could be present, at 3 or 4 locations at the same time. It seemed almost that he was present over there. You can touch him almost. So, etc. All these things it starts from wishful thinking, and that is how you get to realize them finally. And at one stage, of course, it stays as magic. But when it becomes popular science, then even a kid nowadays knows how to hold a conversation over a video call.
So, making things come true or making things possible. Very few people know about your contribution, your seminal contribution towards making of P.C. Sorcar, the Maharaja of Magic, an illustrated book written by your father, and you've played a very significant role in it. Could you tell us a little more about your experience on working on this book, which is so close to your heart?
This particular production by Niyogi Books is very close to my heart, obviously because it deals with my grandfather, but more so because it took me on a journey of his life, the struggles, the happiness, the sadness, everything, because I never saw my grandfather. He passed away long before I was born. And whatever I know of him is from the words of my grandmother and my father and my mother. So I had to build an image of him from what people say or from writings on him. So while working on this book, I got an even closer, a more in-depth look at the persona, the man behind the magician. And also, he was an incredible man, truly incredible. He was magic himself. And this very mantra of making the impossible possible, he did that in his own life. So I think he is the biggest magic. Which is why he is known as the father of modern Indian magic. And I really do not, I never expected any kind of, involvement so far as this particular book was concerned, because my father had already gone ahead and he had written many articles on my grandfather. In fact, I'm sure you are aware of this. In researching the book, we took many of my grandfather's own diaries where he had penned his thoughts and his experiences in different countries when he was touring with the show. But then my father came up to me and said that I want you to be translating these writings, because many of them were in Bengali. And he told me that I want you to be translating them. And now, of course, there are professional translators who do this as part of their job. And I am not a writer, not a professional in any means, but yeah, I do like writing. So, but then I realized why he said that, because to capture the actual raw emotions that were coursing through, almost his veins at that point, and I'm talking about my grandfather here, that connect, it is easier if I, translate it from Bengali to English, which the book is in English. So probably that is why he asked me in particular to go and do this for him, help him out in this way, so that nothing gets lost in translation. I am also in this field. I am facing many of the things that my grandfather had faced during his times. Of course, times have changed and the dynamics have changed. But then, you know what they say, the more things change, the more they remain the same.
Yeah, absolutely. So that reminds me, more things change, more they remain the same. I remember I reading it in the book also that P.C. Sorcar did one trick with the BBC, and it was cut midway. And then in the next
Yes.
day, it was all over the newspapers, and I think the British
Yes.
newspapers and everything. So that was one of, I think, a
Actually, the book
groundbreaking
starts with
moment.
this particular incident.
Sorry?
The book starts with this particular incident, and it was quite something. He had no plans of performing it in that way, but
Mm-hmm.
as my grandfather landed in England, he
Mm-hmm.
saw that the press and the media at large over there, the British media, they were not paying any heed to him, and that had a lot to do with the color of his skin. They were
Mm-hmm.
not taking him seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And then he got an invitation from BBC where very grudgingly they allowed him a slot, and they asked him to perform something in that time frame. And of course, he being PC Sorcar and the thorough professional that he is, he knows his time limit is this, and he would have to perform his act within that time. In fact, he was a very, very punctual man. He would not deviate even by a second.
Yeah.
And that is very important, particularly in magic shows, because we are dependent on many other instruments and our assistants also. So timing and orchestration is everything.
Yeah.
Um, and but when my grandfather was performing the act, right before that, he whispered a certain something into the ears of his lady assistant, and he was performing that particular act, sawing a lady in half
Yeah.
with an electrical saw.
Mm.
So while the act was going on, um, of course, he introduced the saw, and his lady assistant was lying on a wooden table,
Mm.
and he cut her in two with that buzz saw,
Yeah.
and she was divided in half. And right at that moment, the time slot which was allotted to him, the
Mm.
timing was up.
Mm.
The program got cut. The
Mm.
program got interrupted at that crucial moment, and
Mm.
it went on to the BBC News.
Mm.
So people did not get to see the full act.
Mm-hmm.
They thought that the girl has really been sawed in half, and
Mm.
there has been some accident. And
Mm-hmm.
to cover up that accident, BBC
Mm.
had cut the program midway and gone on
Okay.
to the news,
Mm.
which was not the case, of course.
Yes. Uh,
So the next day, when my grandfather woke up, and this was definitely part of his plan, uh,
mm.
every newspaper in England,
Mm.
every British newspaper, every channel was covering this particular news, saying that the girl is all right. This is a magic which was being performed by the great Sorcar. And if you want to catch his show and this particular act, and if you want to see the entire length of it from start to
Yes.
finish, what happens next, you
Mm.
can always come to this particular theater hall and
Yeah.
catch his show. So
Mm.
basically, he got what he wanted.
Yeah. That was brilliant. That was a brilliant idea. That brings me to the current situation right now. Now, this thing I believe happened on television. Right? The BBC, this happened on television, right? So, in current time, when there are not going to be any live events, I'm sure you're aware, you know of it. How do you see the way forward? How do you go forward? What are the next steps?
Um, um, we basically specialize in live shows. A magic show is to be witnessed. If you see it on television or if you see it on the big screen, it really does not hold that charm, uh, the charm which is there for a live show when you witness it right in front of your eyes. A miracle is to be witnessed.
Mm.
So definitely we are having to restructure our schedule. Many of our shows that were supposed to be going on right now, even right at this moment, many of
Mm-hmm.
our tours have been postponed indefinitely,
Mm-hmm.
because and even we are getting to hear that probably because of this COVID situation, theater halls, not only theater halls as in like stage halls, but
Mm-hmm.
also cinema halls, they might not open their doors for the coming 1 year. The
Mm.
situation is that bad. They
Mm.
would not, the government would not allow a gathering of so many people in a enclosed space.
Yeah.
So keeping in mind these restrictions that might come up or might
Mm.
not, it's difficult to predict anything at this point. We
Mm.
will have to, branch out into other forms, other media for the while. But of course, the very heart of it, heart of our business is of course stage shows, and that shall remain. We just have to be patient, keep our fingers crossed, and believe in magic.
Magic. Absolutely. Believe in magic. That's what I've been trying to tell everybody. Believe in magic and believe in yourself. I'm sure things will be fine. Thank you very much.
Magic actually happens to those who believe in it.
Yes, absolutely.
Magic actually happens to those who believe in it. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. So we come to the end of the program. Yes, every good thing comes to an end, of course. But thank you very much for taking out time and coming here on and talking to us. I'm sure there is going to be more magic after talking to you.
Yes.
Thank you
Thank you
very
so much.
much, and I hope to see you again soon.